This isn't the usual kind of video that is posted on this channel, but me and Shark have been working on a story for a while now called This Universe Will End. And you can imagine how that goes. But it's a story that we've been writing for a while now, at least a year. And we wanted to get your opinions on how it's going so far. This is chapter one's audio of us reading it entirely with no sound effects, but I edited together the basic parts. So if you have time to listen to a story, and if you want to give it a shot, we'd like your opinions in the comments below, what to change, what's good, what's bad, etc. But if you want to hear a decent, hopefully decent story, then yeah, here's that. This Universe Will End, Chapter 1. A note, dear reader. The story's universe will be destroyed by the final chapter. Our hero's journey will ultimately have no consequence to them, but may have implications for you. This could be happy or sad, if you choose to see it as such. We certainly hope you will, at least.
The cracked screen showed the pilot exactly what he didn't want to see.
Fuel critical, reserves near empty.
The pilot massaged his temples and groaned.
Let me guess.
He said.
A crack in the fuel tank.
Like the mechanic had told him at the port he briefly stopped at, and the pilot had decided that a quick fix would be fine. It wasn't supposed to be a long trip, now it would be. The pilot looked at the viewport at the planet below, purple and red hues surrounded by off-white clouds and gray atmosphere. Arctura 4, the screen displayed, enough oxygen to breathe, enough gravity to walk.
I'm sure there's something down there I could use,
the pilot said.
Probably.
He left the hangar and entered the warp room. The loud hum of the consoles made it hard to think, along with the large glowing tube blinding him at the center. A few punches of keys stickered with stars and smiley faces, and the tube glowed a turquoise hue. The pilot grabbed the 4-foot-tall steel warhammer next to the door and slung it over his shoulders, trudging into the light. The hum grew louder as a mechanical voice echoed in the room.
Captain Alarm Brusher, heading down.
The voice sounded vaguely human. It was the best the pilot could find.
It's just Brusher!
The pilot snapped before his body burst into energy. A beam of light shot down towards the planet at incredible speeds, parting clouds in its wake. What do you mean? Said
the man at the computer. He was staring at a large curved holoscreen at a grumpy-looking older man in military garb. Neither looked very happy. You heard me, Samuel. Your other job's been canceled. Stand by for further info once we have it. The military man's tones seemed to leave no room for questions.
And how do I pay my loans?
Samuel said. His pointed ears twitched in irritation.
You said there would be a bonus.
You'll get your bonus, the military man grumbled. Just hold tight for a while.
But I...
That's an order! With the last command, the holoscreen shut off, and Samuel was left alone in the cockpit. Samuel's tail swished quickly as he paced back and forth behind the chair. After a minute, he sighed. He looked out at the purple and red-hued planet below. The display said Arctura 4.
Might as well kill some time and salvage something, I suppose,
Samuel said. He grabbed his pistols and survival pack before heading to the teleporter. He entered a set of coordinates and stepped into the glow. A moment later, Samuel's body was shot down in a beam of light.
Brusher usually had decent luck with teleporting. He had ended up ankle-deep in rivers, in the middle of a vast desert, and even on a cold mountaintop or two. He counted himself lucky there were most of the time no bloodthirsty creatures looking at him. 4 or 5 times in all of his hundreds of times, sure. Brusher pondered this as he stared at the jaws of a large reptile, he assumed, and its mouth open in inches from his face. He had taken the place of a lucky bird in a tree, one that had flown away in a flash of light.
I wonder if I scream, will this thing be scared or confused?
Brusher said to himself. Before he could find out, a loud metal clang rang out from somewhere in front of him. The jaws fell away as the giant lizard ran off, revealing the green underbrush and a network of vines. Tangled in the vines was his warhammer.
Ah, you treat me right, Matilda.
Brusher chuckled as he wiggled his arm free of the vines and grabbed the tangle around his other arm. He pulled it up to his face and prepared himself.
I never liked the taste of jungle.
In a swift motion, his beak cut through the vine mass, sending him falling through the trees. A few branches later, he landed on the jungle floor.
Feathers are supposed to make me fall slower.
Brusher groaned, sorely getting up and walking to the hammer. He leaned on it as he got his bearings. The trees were at least 5 feet thick with pink-orange leaves, with vines thick enough for their own canopy. Growls and chirps echoed around the large trunks. It would have made a nice vacation spot if someone leveled an acre or two and built a decent living pod. Then there were the noisy voices from the temple about 20 feet away, and the footsteps coming through the underbrush. "Where'd that lizard run off to?" a gruff voice said. Brusher grabbed the hammer and hid behind a tree as two semi-armored ape-like thugs stepped into the clearing. They carried plasma assault rifles lazily as they made an effort to look around.
They don't seem like they're expecting any trouble.
Brusher thought. One of the thugs grunted.
So much for an easy dinner.
The other thug said.
I'm tired of those flying rabbit things.
Can't have gone that far. One thug shouldered his rifle and motioned for the other to follow. Boss will have our heads for losing something that big. A blaster shot turned the thugs around, rifles aiming frantically. Don't start shooting at nothing. We gotta. The sentence was cut off as the ape-man fell to the ground, a sizzling mark on its head.
The hell?
The other thug kept looking for the intruder.
Come out, thieves!
Pot meat kettle, Samuel thought. He aimed his pistols at the remaining thug and aimed for the head. A blur of motion from behind the simian and a metallic impact grounded the other man. Samuel paused. An avian humanoid with a warhammer stood proudly over his achievement.
Hey, thanks for the help,
Brusher said to the woods.
Whoever you are?
Samuel thought about saying something before voices in the distant bushes started getting louder. Are those idiots shooting at random animals?
Probably trying to hunt again.
Samuel ran out of the bush and grabbed Brusher by an arm wing, in one swift motion, never breaking stride.
Hey, wait!
Brusher protested. Shut up and run, Samuel said. Brusher kept pace as the two sped through the jungle and away from the shouts. You don't seem like a treasure hunter, Samuel said, watching Brusher catch his breath.
You seem like a bounty hunter.
Brusher said.
Am I on a list?
Samuel raised an eyebrow. Not to my knowledge. What are you doing here?
Oh, you know, ship's out of gas. Thought I'd kill time and explore while I starve out here.
Brusher sat against a large rock.
Thanks for the help back there. I'm Brusher.
Samuel, so you're here for no real reason and don't know those pirates?
I didn't know anyone was here on this planet, aside from the 3-story tall beasts and giant wasps.
Samuel looked back to where they came from, then to the ruins barely visible through the trees. They'd gotta be hiding somewhere in there. Wouldn't be guarding empty stone. Samuel pulled out a data tablet and browsed a mass of data.
My experience with pirates proves that they would. Pirates stake a claim on anything, and they'll kill you just to spite you, or the law.
Brusher said dismissively. Samuel ignored him and kept scanning his screen. He paused, his eyes squinting. I wouldn't call this nothing, he said. The ruins only had 2 buildings left standing. Both were shaped like rough pyramids, one more intact than the other. Inside the intact one sat a giant circular shape on a large pedestal about a story tall. The image was too fuzzy to make out much detail. Tell me you have more than that hammer, Samuel said.
Nothing but a few grenades. Why?
The Brusher asked. What?
Too impersonal if you don't look him right in the eyes.
Brusher said flatly. Samuel raised an eyebrow at that. So, you rush in with your hammer and just hope for the best? Doubt clear in his voice.
And explosions.
Brusher added.
The shock and awe, you know.
So, Brusher is an ironic nickname? Samuel asked. Brusher paused and cleared his throat.
Not a nickname, exactly. It's my actual name, but I sort of earn it.
I'm going to guess that you and alarms go hand in hand, don't you?
It's my brand.
Brusher said proudly. Samuel sighed, but didn't say anything. This actually might work in their favor. Think you could shock and awe your way into an old ruin?
The front area of the old temple was cluttered with tents and munitions. Groups of mercenaries gathered sparsely or patrolled the grounds further in. 2 automated turrets scanned the horizon, occasionally shooting at a passing bird. A few of the mercenaries were sifting through the temple salvage.
Not much here besides old statues and broken pots.
Keep looking for some code or weird symbols.
They're all weird looking. How are we supposed to...
An explosion from behind the temple cut off the conversation. Smoke and fire drew several mercenaries to the rear grounds.
Getting gutsy now.
The 3 men at the front stared toward the rear of the temple. The turrets in front started firing into various parts of the underbrush. We're surrounded!
How could they sneak up on us?
The turrets aimed frantically at the forest, the laser blast drowning out the sounds of shouting nearby. Not that it made focusing on targets easier for Samuel.
Of course. 4 had to come back here,
Samuel whispered, aiming at the head of an incoming thug. He and Brescher perched on a ledge 15 feet up behind a large slab. The explosion bought them some time, but it wouldn't last. He fired 2 quick shots and 2 men fell. The other 2 looked up in time to see Brescher drop down and hit them into adjacent walls.
You didn't want to interrogate any of them?
Samuel asked. There's only one hall, Brescher shrugged. Hard to miss what's there.
Or for them to miss us?
Samuel said, climbing down the rough stones. That's still something we can't avoid, Brescher said plainly. The 2 hurried down the stone passages, more voices gathered behind them. There were detailed inscriptions on the walls of strange people tending to crops in a modern-looking city. Large areas of the wall had fallen off from time or from sloppy excavation attempts. The carvings seemed to end in a large circular gate, where the people went in and didn't come out. Why do they just end here? Metaphor for death, I guess? Brescher thought out loud. Why would they carve these when they had access to screens and recorders?
They knew screens needed power. Stone carvings don't. Sometimes simple is better.
What about astral gateways?
What about them?
Can't you make it out of stone?
Generally, no, but I'm sure they tried.
Like that? Brescher pointed ahead at a large room. At the center stood a 3-story tall rectangular stone frame covered in what looked like math equations and art fresco designs. The carvings were so intricate and numerous they could only have been laser carved. The 12 armed men in the room didn't look so intricate. Near the center were 2 figures. One was large and practically a gorilla, while the other was more plant than human. Or was it scales? Samuel and Brescher ran behind a large pillar and listened in.
I don't care how big this is, Forge. We take it with us,
the gorilla said. It's purely symbolic, Forge said. He straightened his glasses. He sounded annoyed and tired. This isn't literally the key. It's...
We've taken ships and hauled them to scrapyards. All of them bigger than this.
And how do we lift a temple that's barely holding up, Captain? Forge quipped. The pair kept arguing loudly to the boredom of the other mercenaries. Samuel handed a blaster to Brescher, who retracted his wing hands. No way, he whispered.
We need to shoot those 2 goons in the middle first,
Samuel hissed.
Unless you have a better plan.
Brescher pointed to the grenades on his belt. I throw these and run up to the ring while you blast the guards. I knock out the big guy.
Who is 8 feet tall.
And hold the green one hostage. Brescher finished with a smile. Samuel shoved his blaster into Brescher's chest. Brescher grunted and grabbed at the pistol clumsily. He barely had time to grab the handle before Samuel was sneaking into the shadows. What am I supposed to... Brescher started whispering. He turned to see Samuel eyeing the mercenaries from 3 pillars over. He quickly glanced to Brescher and back to the center. Brescher understood the signal, but it wouldn't help. Samuel aimed at the gorilla and breathed slowly. He tightened his finger on the trigger. A laser blast left the barrel and soared through the air, entirely missing the center 2 and the portal, leaving a burnt spot where it landed. Samuel blinked a few times. He didn't shoot. Neither did the mercenaries. Samuel quickly turned to see Brescher gripping his pistol so tightly his hand shook, smoke still trailing from the tip of the gun. All of him was shaking, really. His eyes wide and terrified. Samuel breathed deeply and started to think of a new plan. What was that? Who shot? Forge shouted. All mercenaries looked at each other in confusion.
Wasn't us, sir,
one said.
Then who?
The gorilla started. The scientist cut him off. Scan the room, he said. We have intruders. The mercenaries began walking around as Samuel started climbing a pillar. He wedged himself between it and the wall and waited. People passed under him by a few inches. He couldn't hold this for long. Samuel looked for Brescher, but he was gone.
That rat with wings,
he muttered.
He dishes me when things get hairy. Let's get this moving before we have any more incidents,
the gorilla said. He fat-fingered a command on his computer.
Blow the top and get lifting.
Samuel had to act fast.
Maybe if I shoot two below me and...
His thoughts were interrupted by a plume of feathers at the end of the room. Brusher's hand waved a much bigger grenade than usual. Samuel knew what it was and why it was a bad idea. "And how do we propose we lift this?" the scientist said.
Easy. We attach some cables to the base and...
"Pull!" Brusher yelled as he threw the bomb. Samuel hit it with a perfect shot. The two men at the center and all their guards had enough time to see the laser connect before an explosion as big as the room shook the hall. Screams of pain and panic overlapped each other as Samuel jumped down. The columns were collapsing and the roof wasn't far behind. He shot two mercenaries and scanned the room. The carved ring was destroyed and the gorilla was gone. He saw Brusher swinging his hammer at every head he could, a lab coat tied around his waist. The pair took out two more men before running to the exit, Brusher tossing Samuel's pistol back to him.
You said you could use gun.
Samuel shouted. "I never passed the classes!"
What?
"I hit everything but the target! They named a rating after me, apparently!"
The scale below failure to aim, below an F grade, that one?
"Oh, is that it? I thought it'd be cooler. Wait, who told you?"
Ahead.
Brusher looked at the entrance and saw three armed figures barreling towards them. "You have a melee weapon, right?" Brusher shouted, raising his hammer in a jousting manner. Samuel quickly attached his pistols together and formed a staff. The thugs collided with the hammer and staff with a fleshy thud, sending the weapons down and Brusher and Samuel up, the sword over the thugs' heads, slamming their feet into the last thug on the way down. Their stride unbroken, they made it outside to a din of panic and fire. "How are the turrets doing that?" Brusher asked.
I hacked their systems. Only meant to do one, but...
Samuel tread off, pushing a series of buttons on his wrist. He held out a hand to Brusher.
Grab on.
"What?
You want to die here?
I have a ship too!"
That has cloaking and fuel?
Brusher paused and sighed, grabbing Samuel's arm. Samuel rolled his eyes as the two shot upwards in a beam of light.
You're kidding, Samuel said.
"What?"
They were after a portal to paradise?
"For when the universe ends, look like."
And you believe that? Brusher shrugged.
"Seems practical. If you know it's going to end, why stick around?"
When did you swipe these notes anyways? Samuel asked, motioning to several folders on the ground of his cargo hold. Pages of scribbling and diagrams spilled from the manila cardboard.
"That's why it took me a second to signal you."
Brusher said.
"After I attempted to shoot."
About that, Samuel said sourly. How could you be that bad at aiming? Even a child can and has aimed better.
"Me and blasters just don't get along, alright?"
Brusher snapped.
"You won't find a better fighter than me, though. Bet on that."
I'll weigh the odds, Samuel said with a sigh. He glanced at a sheet in his hands. It says once the last way to paradise is lost, all we know shall end.
"So there's other gates out there?"
These records are ancient. Doubt there's any left.
"Kinda wonder how many could be usable."
Brusher trailed off as he looked out the window. The black space stared back assertively. It would take far too long to find out, Samuel said. But I'll let you know if I find any. You got a comms ID, I'll add you. Brusher didn't say anything. Hey, you there? Samuel turned to see Brusher still staring out the window. You missed the planet that badly?
"Were you expecting company?"
Brusher asked. No. Didn't detect any signals outgoing either. Why? You see something?
"No."
All right then, well...
"No, I mean, I see a nothing."
Nothing? Samuel asked. He walked to the window and looked out too. What is a nothing? He froze now. It really was a nothing. A warping massive void in the distance. It passed over a planet, and the two saw the shape of the red giant distort and blur until only blackness, darker than space, remained. Go, Samuel said softly.
Uh-huh.
Brusher asked, barely looking away from the anomaly. Get your stuff.
"Wait, it's still a ways out. Don't we..."
Brusher started. Samuel shoved a hollow tablet into Brusher's face. The screen showed pictographs of the tablets they had found in the pyramids. A great empty mass slowly took over the pictures of planets and small people. The writing said that a hungry mass will erase the universe as we know it. My sensors can't tell if that thing is a black hole gone wrong or worse. You said your ship is out of fuel, right? Samuel did his best to hide the fear in his voice.
I just can't just leave her here. If I can make some biofuel.
Brusher said, looking at his ship. Either you salvage from your ship or you get deleted with it. Brusher looked at Samuel, his eyes a mixture of panic and empathy. Brusher nodded slowly.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Over the course of half an hour, Brusher teleported over all he could fit. Most of his cargo was explosives, rare artifacts, and photos, mostly of himself, and a few with girls that never went past bar night. Brusher took a moment to look back at his metal desk and bed, built into the old hauler. They were never comfortable, but this was the only ship he scraped together enough credits for, along with some tricky deals, naturally. He sighed as he teleported one last time, and a while later saw his ship and Actora 4 get devoured. We'll find you a new one, Samuel said, trying to sound sympathetic.
She was my first ship, you know.
Brusher said semi-wistfully. Been through plenty of first ships, kid.
I'm only a year younger than you.
Not an experience. Samuel located a trading post amidst the scans on the screen. A few button presses later, and they were seeing the stars go by the viewport. The engine's on full blast. I know a place we can chill out and think.
Good bar, hopefully.
Decent. Mind looking over the research and finding out more about that void eating the universe?
The mouth.
We're naming this thing now?
Yeah, I'm calling it the mouth.
Brusher said, sitting on the floor. He picked up a folder and started casually reading. Sure, mouth sounds accurate. Samuel sat in the pilot's chair. The two rode in silence as they thought about what happened. They accidentally unleashed a world-ending hunger that would spell doom for everyone. If there was a way to stop it, they didn't have much time. If it could be stopped at all.